So I am not going to sugarcoat it for you. Finding the right wedding vendors for your day can be really, really stressful. It's not an easy task because there are so many out there. And even as a planner, sometimes, it just takes a lot of time just to find the right vendor for the client, for the price, for the style. It can get really, really overwhelming because how are you supposed to make so many decisions in a relatively short period of time with so much information? If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'm really big on mindset, just setting yourself up for success while planning your wedding. And it's no different when it comes to wedding vendors. This is less of a how-to, but I just want to let you know all the things that I've learned and observed as a planner, having planned over 30 weddings, but having planned probably 150 plus 200 events over the last 10 plus years. These are just some things that I've learned and might help just level set your stress levels and your expectations when it comes to booking vendors. You've booked your venue and you're like, oh my gosh, I got such a large task out of the way. And it's true, congratulations. Honestly, I always tell my clients, booking your venue is like half of the list, I feel like, because once you book your venue, you can move on to everything else. Of course, if you book a completely blank event space, that might take a lot of work. Choosing a venue and a date is such a big step, so congratulations on getting here. If you're planning a wedding more than a year out, you probably have a little bit of breathing room to just take a breath and enjoy the fact that you booked a venue. But if you have less than maybe 8 months, you might want to get going on booking the rest of your vendors. Some vendors do get booked up really quickly, especially for instance photographers, because there are some people who want a specific photographer, or there might be photographers that are really popular in their area. So some people can tend to get booked up quickly, especially if you choose a really popular date or month. Here's a few truths that I've learned as a wedding planner, and this is really from my perspective and my experience and my observation. So I don't want to say facts as if they're hard, cold facts, but these are my truths. So truth number one, especially in a market like New York or LA where I am based, there really is no shortage of wedding vendors. There's always someone starting a new business. There's always a friend or someone who's starting a side hustle. So in that way, if you're in a bigger city, you can always find someone within your price range that will offer something you like. It might take a little bit of research, but you will most likely be able to find someone that you like within your price range, hopefully. This leads me to my second truth. Truth number two, you get what you pay for. So let's say you're doing all this vendor shopping, or let's say flowers, and everyone's coming back to you with a quote between $3,500 and $5,000. And then this one person comes back to you and says, oh, I can do all of that for $1,200. That raises a little bit of a red flag in my head, because that to me shows that you probably don't have the experience and you're desperate for the business, which is totally fine because they might be a rock star in the making. But you just want to be careful about what you expect, because it's not just about the price, it's about, are they going to be able to deliver what you want? Truth number three, not all vendors are great. I am going to say that. I mean, there's just people who are not great business owners, just not great people. You would think that because we're in the wedding industry where it's all about service and love and all of that, people will be really great and nice all around, but that's just not the case, and that's just reality. And it's fine. You just have to do the work to feel people out to see who you really connect with, right? Additionally, some companies, they may be overextended, understaffed, they might be growing, and they might not be able to fulfill their growth. Maybe at the time of doing your wedding, they might have been amazing like the year before, but maybe they're not in the best place. So you just kind of have to do your due diligence, because what you see on social media isn't always what you're going to get. For instance, I did book a decor vendor, a custom decor vendor. They were doing this really cool like ceiling treatment for me with disco balls, and they told me they needed like 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time. And so I put in the order and I was asking for samples, and just the process started to get really clunky, but I was already locked in with this vendor because they had told me they could do it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't exactly what the client and I had discussed with this vendor. It all ended up being fine and it did look beautiful, but it wasn't what we had talked about. They didn't send me pictures until the week of, when I had been asking it for weeks and weeks, because I thought they needed 6 to 8 weeks, which means that they were gonna get started sooner, but I think they were finishing up the items literally the week of, like the day before. And when they showed up, it wasn't entirely correct. We had time to course correct the colors and things like that and the way it was laid out. But that was not an experience that I want to go through again. And to be honest, it wasn't a small amount of money, but it was definitely less than what some of the other vendors had quoted me. All this to say, I felt they were a little bit overextended, understaffed, they overpromised and underdelivered a little bit. At the end of the day, the client was happy, so all was good. But these are just some things that you might expect, especially if you're doing a lot of custom work. So from my perspective as a planner, I don't work twice with vendors that I did not vibe with. If they were not kind, if they were not communicative, if they did not deliver what they said they would in the time frame that they said they would, I most likely 99% will not be working with them again. If they're a vendor I've worked with before, I understand things happen, and I really try to have empathy when things go wrong, because things do go wrong and sometimes it's really out of everybody's control. But for me, it's just about if they're owning up to their mistake or trying to be helpful and be in it with me and be a team player and collaborate to solve the problem. That's really all that matters to me. But if they're not like that, then they're not going to hear from me again. When a client asks me about a vendor, if I've worked with them, I will be honest with them about what I think they can do if I've worked with them before. If I haven't worked with them, a lot of times I am on calls, on discovery calls with my clients, and I will let them know if I think they would be a good fit or not. And sometimes the client, obviously it's going to be their decision at the end of the day, but sometimes they don't always make the decision that I recommend, and it doesn't always end up in the best way. Not to say that my recommendations are always correct, because sometimes it's a gamble, especially if I've never worked with the vendor before. But I always try to make my best recommendation based on my gut feeling, because a lot of times my gut feeling and instincts are correct. When you book your own vendors, you should really follow that feeling as well, because if you feel like something is a little off, there's something that's probably a little bit of a red flag that even if you can't explain it, there's a reason it's there. I hope this video sets you up mentally as you're looking for your wedding vendors. Remember, your wedding day is like an orchestra of people coming together and just playing this beautiful piece of music, let's say. Okay, that was like super cheesy, but it's really all these people coming together to make it happen. And hopefully you'll have at least a coordinator, if not a planner, to help you through this journey. It's really about how you're going to feel. So you always want to work with people who are going to have your back, who are going to support you and not just leave you hanging with no responses and all of that. But also you want to give a little bit of grace, because a lot of these vendors are small businesses. A lot of them, are solopreneurs who are working on their own. So there's a bit of a fine balance, like you have to strike with being understanding, but also being firm in what you need as a client. So I hope that was helpful, and I wish you the best of luck with your wedding planning. This is just the next step after you book your venue. Next week, I will be talking about tips for booking a wedding photographer, just things to look out for, because photographers are definitely one of the most important vendors that are required for your wedding day.